In the heart of the state-of-the-art, at the dawn of the next stage in entertainment, you found No Proscenium.
You have indeed found No Proscenium, the voice of everything immersive. I'm your host, Noah Nelson, and welcome to episode 396. This week, a double feature as we hurtle our way towards our 400th episode. First up this week, our good friend Monica Miklas joins us to talk about a career arc that has taken her from indie work at the Hollywood Fringe Festival to being a senior manager of creative direction at RWS Entertainment, one of the biggest themed entertainment companies in the world, working on everything from haunts to cruise ships. Then we take a leap over into the digital realm and talk with Clement Deneux and Michael Masukawa of Atlas V about MONSTRORAMA, a Tribeca Immersive selection that truly delighted me this month. Before we get to that, I just need to give a huge thank you to everyone who has stuck with us on Patreon through thick and thin. We've been very lucky to have so many of you keep with us, with me, and that's allowed us to get this far. We've had a fair amount of churn this month, but I'm happy to say that at least for June, we've had a new sustaining backer jump in. They're known to us only as Hail the Visionary, and while the emanations are perplexing, the auguries appear very, very true. Wait, what am I saying? Okay, but in all seriousness, thank you all. Yes, we do have a sustaining backer for this month called Hail the Visionary. No, they had no idea I was going to say those words. I had no idea I was going to say those words. Something just took over me. But seriously, we have had some churn this month, and that presence, those folks are keeping us stable at the moment. There is a bright future ahead for us here at No Pro. I can see it. It's emerging right now. I've got a whole lot of people to thank, particularly next week. I'm trying not to jinx something. Something's happening. Something should be happening while you're listening to this, but it only should be. You never can tell. So, hitting up patreon.com/NoProscenium not only powers the podcast and the websites for No Pro and everything immersive, it also gets you into our member-only Discord. In fact, we've started scheduling backer-only and professional hangouts in the Discord, weaving together our community a little tighter over coffee, something I've been getting myself up early for. If you're already a backer, don't forget to link your Patreon account to the Discord and drop a review on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice and share the articles you find useful on your social media platform of choice, even on Blue Sky. It helps immensely. We are always No Proscenium, even on Blue Sky. Except on Insta, where we are no_proscenium. As always, big thanks to our sustaining backers: Samuel Nustri, Chris Woolman, Samantha Davison, Eric Shamlin, Elaine, Daryl, John Boulette, Jay Bushman, Jerome Joseph Genties, Tom Leonetti McGuire, Kurt Collins, Hail the Visionary, Winthorn, Ryan, David Bassick, Richard Ayers, Lonnie Hanson, Lecker LaCool, the Ministry of Peculiarities, and Jan Budman. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. We're also on the lookout for community partners who are up for working out special deals for our backers. Hit me up at noah@noproscenium.com for details. But if you do this weekend, don't expect a response until Tuesday, if you're listening to this on the weekend this drops, because I am out of town. Yeah, more on that next week. Oh, and definitely more on that next week. And with that, let's get into this double feature to keep you tithed over until we're back to our normal broadcasting duties. Joining us now is Monica Miklas, Senior Manager of Creative Direction at RWS Entertainment Group, who many of you also know as the Director of Grassroots District Live in the Lot 73, and as one of the founders of Capital W, creators of the immersive shows Fire Season and Rochester 1996. Monica, it's so good to have you back on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be back.
Monica's a friend, and puts up with a lot from me, I think. So this will be like one of those like super informal conversations. I want to get into what you're doing at RWS,
Yeah.
because this arc you've been on from like indie creator who like I first met like producing stuff at the Hollywood Fringe to like directing the Themed Entertainment Association's award show and like popping all over the world doing immersive on cruise ships. That's the executive summary of what we're going to explore. But last time I saw you was a couple weeks ago at WoW. You guys took Grassroots District down to the festival. How'd that go?
Oh my gosh, it was such a blast. We were so grateful to Wow Fest for having us and to everybody on the La Jolla Playhouse team for making us feel so welcome. So working with the creators of Grassroots District, Ari Hurston and Andrew Lieb, um, I came back aboard to direct this reincarnation of the show, which we had premiered in summer 21 in Los Angeles. And we took over Priebus Plaza outside the Rady Shell down at Wow Fest, which was actually in downtown San Diego. And we recreated the lot. We made some script adaptations to change locations. We brought in a few new cast members and band members and worked them in, and really got to reach a very different type of audience than we reached before. Which had some fun challenges. I think our second day performing went a little better than the first day, but I think people had a lot of fun.
There were a lot of folks. Like I was rolling that day with Todd Martins of the LA Times, and like that plaza was packed full of people, and it was a very different vibe. Like it was a different crowd, but not entirely different. Like there was some, is it not homogeneity, like the opposite of homogeneity, right? You know, like
Right.
it was a mix, but it
Very
was
much so.
definitely different than the folks who were coming to the arts district.
Yes, it was the crowd was weighted differently. I would say there
Right.
were um, more folks kind of the next generation or two above where the creators are. We're all right in the thick of the millennial curve as
Right.
the creative team.
Yeah, there were Gen
Um,
Xers and boomers in the crowd. There were people
totally.
who were actually at these kinds of shows in
Yes.
the 70s in the crowd, right?
Totally. There were those folks at our original run too, but it was a higher proportion of the crowd
Mhm.
down in San Diego. But we still had young people. There was a lot of diversity in the crowd. There were a few people who made the trip down from LA who'd already seen it before and wanted to see it again. That was really gratifying. And I did get a
You've
lot of
got
people,
brassies, you've got real life brassies.
real life Brassies, I know. And there were a lot of folks who came up to me and said, I was going to concerts in 73 and here's who I saw, and I saw Sly and the Family Stone, and that was pretty awesome. I had
Here's
one
what I did in the
really
back of a van in
yes,
1973. It's like, whoa,
whoa,
okay, yeah.
whoa, too much. I
Yeah.
had one really special connection with a fan. She did tell me how old she was, and now I can't remember. She was in her 50, like late 50s, early 60s,
Mm.
and we just shared this really special moment in the final song of the show, which is called Together. And the chorus goes, people coming together and people dreaming about the kind of world this could be. And she looked at me, we're all standing in a circle. And she looked at me and said, we really have to come together. Like she was almost in tears.
Oh,
And like we hugged, she kissed me on the head. Like it was so sweet and
oh
so
wow.
genuine. It really reminded me of the power of that show.
Yeah. I was just excited for you guys to like get to like expose it to a different group of people, and because WoW was free this year, just to like remove the price barrier. Like, what happens when we can just share art, share performance with folks, and just whoever wants it, you know, like
Yes,
whoever really wants it, just come and get it, right? And so it was really good to see so many people in that crowd.
absolutely. So fun to see the mix of families, of older folks, of young people. Yeah, people who might not normally get to attend a theater festival, let alone a sort of avant garde, um, progressive theater festival like WOW. I was amazed by the numbers of people at that festival. It's quite cool.
So let's circling around to what your day job is these days, and
Yeah.
like what's kind of exciting for me from the outside is like, you've been in the nonprofit world for a very long time. You had a
Mhm.
lot of development gigs. You were working for institutions here in LA, and just watching you transition from producer side to director side and creative side, and now you've got a title of senior manager of creative direction, and you're working for RWS now. The folks who listen who are in the themed entertainment industry know who RWS is,
Right.
but I think a lot of like our theater kids and definitely like our VR kids like don't know. So for starters, what is RWS Entertainment?
Yeah, RWS Entertainment Group is the world's largest entertainment provider for the leisure and hospitality industry. So, in short, that means we provide entertainment for places where people are going to have fun. So, places like cruise ships, places like theme parks and resorts. And we develop entertainment that has performers. There's sort of a traditional proscenium based song and dance division of our work that's really fun and people truly love. We also develop experiences that are more walkthrough, more environmental. I'm working on a lot of projects like that this year. We do a fair number of haunts. We do a lot of holiday activations all over the country. And we also we're now a family of companies. The company has grown in the last couple of years. So RWS encompasses JRA, which is one of the most revered themed entertainment design firms in the country. A company called TED, which is based out of the UK, doing very similar work in leisure and hospitality, but also has some very interesting divisions working in animation, in merchandise, in
Mm.
technical and AV. And then also a casting company called ARC, which was formerly Binder Casting, again, a highly respected Broadway casting firm founded by Jay Binder, the late Jay Binder. So we really aim to be kind of a one-stop shop for a client, that they could partner with JRA to do master planning, to develop a theme park, to develop a new addition. Then they could work with RWS to develop entertainment solutions, with TED on AV, with merch, and then ARC, Casting by ARC, can cast the whole thing for them. So we create this pipeline for clients where we can be with them from the start to finish, and then the continued operations of a project.
So taking a project from inception through casting and even helping guide the operation, it sounds like
Yes,
is what literally what you just said. There was a technical
but
glitch on
shorter.
our
Thank
end.
you.
So yes, no, I mean, I was also reminding myself because we just had a technical glitch and I wanted to like get my brain up to speed.
Of course.
They won't know there was an edit there. Um, so that's the arc, right? Like
Yeah,
what part of the game are you in? Like
yeah,
where does the Monica magic enter into the formula?
totally. So I work within RWS proper, in our land division. So I'm on a large team that manages everything happening on land as opposed to at sea on cruise ships.
Okay.
So some of
Does
my
the
clients,
admiral is the one who handles the stuff? No, I'm sorry.
correct. Yeah, there's an
Yeah,
admiral. No,
there's an admiral. Okay,
there's no
good. Right.
admiral.
Just making sure. Right.
Yeah,
Monica by land, admiral by sea. Got it. Okay,
correct,
good.
correct. Yeah. So our land division has kind of two parts. We have a creative team and a production team, and we work, side by side in collaborative teams based on different projects. So I can't talk about all of my projects, but
Right.
like the Theas are a perfect example. The Themed Entertainment Association's annual gala and award show. A team from RWS produced the Theas this year, and we'll produce again next year. And I worked with a production team. There was also an art director. I served as the creative director, and together we, kind of covered everything from the concepting to the actual execution of the event.
I've seen work you've produced from, the Lost Moon radio shows,
Mm-hmm.
which are these, fun comedy musical events. That's where I first knew you from, back at the Hollywood Fringe. So like real DIY, but executed at a high level events, all the way to the super intimate work. I mean, Fire Season was this deeply personal audio based story where we only saw you at the end,
Right.
and had a connective kind of communal moment. What How much of your entire, bag of tricks do you get to deploy into this space? Because coming from the outside, looking at this particular type of themed entertainment, like the sense is very corporate. Like
Mhm.
again, from the outside, everybody, right? Like I'm sitting here
Sure.
going like, oh, go into a resort and you're gonna see like the resort's 7 p.m. show, or getting on the cruise ship, and it's like, actually, I don't know what happens on cruise ships because I've never been on a cruise ship, but nevertheless, something that's super structured and doesn't necessarily have that kind of funky quirk that doesn't color inside the lines vibe that indie theater and immersive theater, particularly indie immersive theater, tends to have. So yeah, what gets to get deployed in here, or are things changing in RWS's world in terms of what those audiences are maybe open to,
Mm.
slash maybe even are their expectations changing? Because I think this is the big question that I have about all of this is, how open are the clients and how open are the audiences to these new paradigms of experience and entertainment?
Yeah. Well, let me start with that question about clients. I think
Yeah.
that a lot of our clients are recognizing that there is a shift happening in the entertainment industry, in live entertainment. And audiences are, I think, becoming more sophisticated, and they want to be inside of stories. And we see
Mm,
this all over, Galactic Star Cruiser at Disney is such a prime example of this, of people wanting to be inside the story. And we are getting that request from clients. Now, clients are at different points of readiness for that. Audiences
mhm.
are at different points of readiness. So when I think about kind of the bag of tricks that I've developed over the course of my career, the things that always come up are an adherence to story and to storytelling across experiences, and looking for all the places where there are natural touch points, and then thinking about how can those touch points become story points as well.
Mm.
So for instance, you have to check in at a box office to go to a theater show. How can that be part of the storytelling? You have to be onboarded. How can the onboarding become part of the storytelling? So that doesn't change, even though perhaps uh, the level of interactivity is quite different in some of this more corporate theater than it would be in DIY. That adherence to story first is always there.
Is that a matter of scale, like just the sheer number of people that are being involved? You're nodding your head, so
Yes, throughput is a huge consideration. I have one project right now, which I can't talk about too much yet, but the excuse me, the throughput is something like 600 people per hour, and I'm not sure
oh
600 people have ever seen one of my shows before. Maybe
yeah,
Grassroots at this point, I think
yes.
is over that number, and that's probably the only one. So you want to create that feeling of intimacy for all 600 people, or over the course of the night, 2,400 maybe, but you
Right,
can't do it in exactly the same way that you could if you were dealing with 48 people in a night in
right.
four groups of 12. So it creates these new design challenges, and this is where I'm so grateful that I'm now on these larger teams where there's an art director. Typically there are multiple designers who are funded to be there throughout the entire process. I think when you're doing DIY theater, it's a little more catch as catch can in terms of design, at least the way that Capital W has worked in the past. We
Oh, I
work
think
with,
it's the way that everyone winds up
yeah,
working. You're right. Like, hey, is Dino available tonight? No. Okay. Is he available
Yeah.
tomorrow? Right. Like, can we get him when do we have him? Yeah.
And we've
Yeah.
worked with brilliant designers over the course of Capital W's life, but very
Oh yeah.
often,
No, seriously. Like, like Xing, for instance, right?
I mean,
Like
Xing is
there's some,
amazing. Xing and
yeah,
Core production designed Hamlet Mobile, and they are a genius. Um,
like certified. I think literally wasn't Genius granted at some point? No,
yeah,
I don't know about
literally
Genius, but
certified.
yeah,
They're
yeah, yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Um, but very often, for instance, Lauren Ludwig, my creative partner, they're designing the costumes because we don't have an official costume designer. So on a specific show, it's rare that we have kind of the full suite of
Right.
a design team. And that's quite different in the world I'm working in now with RWS. And that's kind of a fun change, a fun change of pace.
Are those designers like, are they excited by the prospect of this how do we scale intimacy challenge?
Very much so. I really have felt that the teams that I'm on, we have even an immersive division within RWS. And both the production team and the creative teams are really aligned in wanting to create those special moments for guests. We talk a lot about creating an emotional souvenir for guests,
Mm.
and that can happen regardless of scale. And I think that's important to remember. And so it's about trying to find balance and finding solutions that can work for people at different levels of desired engagement. It's the waiters, swimmers, divers
Yeah.
thing. Like for waiters, we don't need to provide a one-on-one with a character for every single waiter. They don't need that, and that's okay. That is totally fine that that's how they want to play. But for divers, we want to make sure that it's there for them.
Yeah. And and what's interesting about the waiter swimmer divers metaphor, right, is that particularly whenever we're talking about making systems out of things, or whenever we're talking about abstracting humans and human behaviors into something that can be treated kind of programmatically, we forget that the innate spark of, or well, we can lose sight of, I don't think we necessarily forget, but we can lose sight of the fact that the innate spark of human agency means on any given day you might be one of those roles. Just because you've been a diver before doesn't mean you're always going to be a diver. Some people are always going to lead with that. Like that's like why they come. But like, I know in my experience, I usually wade into an event before I decide to dive, right? Like I
Me
walk
too.
in and like, I'm like, all, do I really want to, do I want to hold my breath? Do I want to get down in there? I don't know. Let's see what they have to offer. And I think a lot of people, I see this in the indie and the people going from indie to trying to get to slightly larger, like they think they're designing for one type, or they think that they've got like different tracks for the different types. And it's like, you know, life isn't a role-playing game. You're not a character class, like, you may have woken up this morning and you just need a deep connection. You may have woken up this morning and be like, I couldn't handle one person asking me for a favor today, even a fictional character, like,
It's so
please help
true.
me. No, I'd rather watch
No,
you
thank
die,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
like suffer for me, please,
Yes. I've had that same experience as an audience member. I find that in experiences where I can talk, where I can speak to characters, I tend to be more of a diver. And in
Mm.
experiences that are more quiet or where I have to be silent, I hang back. I don't know why that's the case, but I have observed that to be the case in myself.
I tend to find like when something's got, real, when something's got real like bring your own fun energy,
Hmm.
I'm way dependent upon what mood I'm in that day, and I'll either be full on like, you need to impress me because
Hmm.
like I'm not having it, or I'll be like, oh, you're not telling me, you didn't give me an injunction, you didn't let me know like who I am in this world. Well, guess what? I'm an agent of chaos, and
Oh
like I'm
no.
going to,
Every
there's one show
producer's worst nightmare.
well,
The
but
agent of chaos.
hey, it's their own fault, right? Like
I know.
there's a show recently, like the framing was, oh, we're dealing with like modern cryptids, and like they could appear like people,
Ooh.
and like we weren't given we weren't given real strong sense of like who we were in the world.
Yeah.
And the world was kind of like loosely sketched. And I'm like, well, I know from the lore that there are, things that aren't human in human bodies. So I'll just be one of those, you know, I'll just ambiguously act like it, like I'll
Mhm.
just be like, I don't know. Other people could think that maybe I'm part of the show,
Right.
but again, because I wasn't given a strong injunction, but given like a lot of free roam agency, right? It's like,
Yeah.
and that I feel is like the problem people set up for themselves is like, if you're saying like, make your own fun, because they're assuming that everyone's going to be a diver, but that everyone's going to stick to the path that they have laid out,
Right.
even if the path isn't really obvious. And so these are some of the design faux pas people are running themselves into.
Yeah, I really feel that you have to model how you want people to play in the world.
That's the game.
Mhm.
Yeah. Dive in on that actually, if you
Yeah.
could. Like, how do you mean? Are you talking about how do you model for people how they should be behaving?
Right. I guess for me, this comes up in performer driven experiences. And I should say a lot of my work right now for RWS does not have performers, which is something interesting we could talk about too, that transition.
Yeah, let's do that in a second.
But with performers, I'll think about the cruise ship shows we did last fall. Our
Mhm.
team developed a package of shows for MSC Cruises, which are fully immersive. The audience is cast when they enter in a particular role, depending on the show. And we have to show them what is acceptable within the world. So, for instance, there's one show where everyone is cast as a spy, basically a graduate of a spy academy. And we have other uh, graduates who are the performers, and they have these pool noodle swords. And
Gotta love a cruise ship because
yeah,
they were already there, right? It's like, hey, what do we have? Pool noodle.
pool noodles. We had to order the pool noodles.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
and they're special. They're short, so they're
Oh,
not
special
quite
order.
as yeah,
Okay.
they're not quite as
They're not quarter staff pool
waggly.
noodles. Yeah, they're
No,
sword length pool noodles. Yes.
correct,
All right.
correct.
I get it.
And
I
there's
get it now.
blue and green because there's two different sides. And we had to kind of model for people in the pre-show how to play with their swords and to not hit performers with them, because sometimes that would
Right.
come up that kids would kind of gang up on a particular performer and try to beat them up with their pool noodle swords. So
People should stop showing kids National Lampoon's Vacation. Like, just like, don't teach your children to beat up the performers, please.
right,
Anyway,
please.
so
Anyway, so we realized we had to be really clear with the performers. Hey, when you're modeling sword fights, make sure you're not actually making contact with other performers. Make sure you're only going like
mm,
noodle to noodle contact. And that sort of teaches people this is what we're doing. We're doing noodle sword fights. We're not banging each other with them.
yeah.
Yeah. That's just one example.
Which is a good example, right? It's like people will model, and even if it's not conscious, like
Yeah,
if they see something, they'll assume it's acceptable, right?
exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
that's how humans are.
It is. We're
Um,
mimics. And from the time that we're babies, that's how babies learn about the world, is by mimicking the people around them.
yeah.
So it's innate to us. And so we have to be very, very careful. Another great example from another one of those shows is it's kind of the sexy show in the package. It's much more dance driven. I would say there's slightly less story, but you're on a yacht outside Ibiza, and you're at this kind of hedonistic dance party. And I told the performers, hey, you've got to be careful in how you touch each other during this show, because there
Mm,
ended up being some people who were in relationships with each other. So there's a possibility of like, oh, you'd get, your comfort level of touch between each other is going to be much higher than your comfort level with the audience.
right.
So if you don't want the audience grabbing your butt, don't grab another performer's butt.
Yeah.
Don't model that.
Yeah.
And that was kind of an interesting one too.
It's true.
Mhm.
It's just brass tacks Full
Yeah.
facts.
Yeah.
You mentioned before we start on this track about taking on this challenge in the work where it's not performance driven, where
Yeah.
you're doing a lot of work where you don't have you have the design challenge of, we're going to take away a key part of your normal palette. So how's that going? How are you approaching that?
It's been a real challenge for me. I am so attuned to performance by nature. I am a performer, um, moving more into directing in the last few years. I have gained even a greater vocabulary with working with performers. Again, really modeled off of so much that I've learned by working so closely with Lauren. Um, so it is, yeah, it is working without one of the paints in my palette. It's made me realize that sometimes in one of these experiences, we need an emotional arc more than we need a narrative arc.
Yes.
We need
Yes.
the feeling of a story, the feeling of climax, release, denouement, but we don't necessarily need a literal story. And I think sometimes when we are fixated on literal story, we can get lost in the weeds and it doesn't come across to guests.
I'm so glad you said that. Like, this is something, like, even before I was in this space, even before I was like, dealing with immersive, I was like, when I'd be going and like reading all the Save the Cat screenplay books, right? Back when I had the aspirations of doing screenwriting, right?
Mhm.
And like going through and sort of rejecting the formula, or watching that guy, like, and he did a lot to shape a lot of people's minds, and he's passed. And like, it's actually, in some ways, it's a great boon, right? Like that book is useful if you need a blade in to kind of go it, or Robert McKee's story, or any of these things.
Mm.
But like watching him map, say, like Christopher Nolan's Memento, or like being grouchy about Christopher Nolan's Memento not following the formula, or being able to
Mm.
find the formula through, because you start to realize that it's the emotional arcs, it's the vibes of that arc. If you're getting the emotional vibes through, maybe the plot is like shattered and going non-linear, or just the
Mhm.
information's not coming at you in a way that's clean, but because the characters are on this discernible emotional arc, the rise, the fall, the whole nine
Right.
yards, it almost doesn't matter what the facts of the case are, if the feeling is there.
Yes.
And that's like the hidden truth, the dirty secret is, the plot kind of doesn't matter. Like, these things are more poetry than they
Mm.
are mathematical formula.
You know, it's very interesting and relevant. Lauren and I have been talking lately about plots because I
mm,
have started writing a musical, which is weird and exciting.
you've been
Um,
around a musical for a couple of years now, so I find it a
you
little less
know,
weird. A
I'm
little
not a
less weird than I would have.
musician, and so
I
I
know.
think I have a great ear for music, but I can't make music. So
Book by one person, lyrics by the other.
there
That's
you
the
go.
other beautiful part of the musical world. Took me a
Exactly.
long time to appreciate that, but it's
Yes.
true. Yeah.
But anyway, Lauren and I have been talking about plot, and I was telling her that I'm so scared of plot from a
Mm,
large degree. I think it's why, as a writer, even since I was a child, it's very hard for me to finish things.
yeah.
Whereas I feel like creating worlds, like Fire Season is very much an example of how I typically write, and it's impressionistic, it's feelings, it's
Yeah.
images. But plot is quite difficult for me. And she made the great point that, like, the plot, it's like the mechanics of the plot don't matter. It's how you write it. The plot is a container. It's the glass, and the story is the wine in the glass. And
Yeah.
that's going to be different every time. Even if it's Hamlet, you could retell Hamlet forever and ever
Right.
by changing, the hand of the artist will change the story.
Well, it's
So
why,
that's
they
been
talk about there only being so many plots in the world. And
exactly
and people, I think younger creators, this is one thing I wish I could have disabused myself, right? Would have shaped things better for me. You know, just be like, "Oh, don't worry about the fact that your plot's not original." Like,
right.
people much wiser than
Who
you figured
cares?
out, there's only a few. Like, this is
Yeah.
this is not like, you're not going to come up with like, I came up with the plot that no one can. Nope. You're
Nope.
not. You're coming up with something different. Your job is to play the instrument the way
Right.
you play the instrument, not
That's exactly it.
yeah.
Like I, as a writer, I'm never going to write the usual suspects, like
Right.
twists and surprises. And it's just not, I don't think of myself as a terribly clever person. Um, but to be able to take a story that has been told 1,000 times and tell it a new way, that feels right. That feels doable. So
Yeah.
it's been quite a relief. And it's kind of funny that it took someone. I mean, Lauren is incredibly wise and has studied story her entire career, so it makes sense that she's the one who told me that. But it was strange that I couldn't get there myself. I think, given how deeply ingrained in the creative process I am, it was such a blinder.
But that's part of it, right? It's like the more ingrained you get, the more you've dug your own tunnel into this, the
Mm,
harder it is to think about the other tunnels. And then someone
right.
has to Kool-Aid man their way into your reality tunnel and be like, oh,
Yeah.
there's a whole other thing over here, right? Like, why are you go chasing that? Don't worry about that.
Totally.
Or to turn you around and point you at what you've already done and be like, look at how pretty this is, right?
Mm,
That's that's part of the whole thing. That's why it's great having someone like a Lauren Ludwig around. You know,
it is. It is
uh,
truly great.
yeah, the missing third person on this one in some ways.
Indeed. Indeed.
She's her not dead Force ghost is following us around on this
Yes,
one.
Lauren is not dead. Lauren is
Not dead.
alive.
No,
Not
no.
dead.
Oh
Doing
God,
great. Doing great.
why did I even say that? Why am I tempting
Oh
fate?
God.
So, no. I might cut that part. So,
Okay.
probably won't. I'm too silly. Um, what what advice would you give? I'm asking this part because I think this will come out, I think, after Summit, but you'll have been on this
Mm-hmm.
panel we're putting together about people doing, or salon about people making their careers in immersive.
Right.
And I look at the career you've carved out for yourself, and I'm wondering, what advice would you give the the Monica who was producing Lost Moon Radio circa like 2012?
Oh my gosh.
Like what
Baby mom.
advice? Yeah, Baby Mon. What would you give? What would you give Baby Mon? What advice would you give her?
Hmm.
Or particularly like not just Lost Moon. Let's go to like Hamlet Mobile. Like Hamlet
Yes.
Mobile Monica. What would you tell her right now if you could?
Interesting.
I did not prep Monica for this one, everybody. So like I'm
Yeah.
gonna vamp for a second and just let her think about the ham van, all those actors, Shing's amazing design, this
She's amazing.
improbability, this improbable thing that was there running around, sitting in lawn chairs on street corners in Hollywood.
Oh, and mind you, I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the pod before, but the first time we did it, when I was sitting in the lawn chair in my jumpsuit, my mechanic's jumpsuit, I was in the midst of a terrible tooth problem, and
I don't think we talked about the
was
show, but I
in
think you have mentioned it to me personally.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was in just unbelievable constant pain, and then was high on Vicodin for like 4 days, which made me very sick. But it was the only way I could eat while I was waiting to get the root canal. So I was just high out of my mind, sitting on the sidewalk in Hollywood in a jumpsuit with a skull on the back. So, yep, that was my 20s.
So is most of the advice you'd give Baby Mon just like get like a dental insurance plan or
Get dental insurance. One, get dental
one?
insurance, and
Yeah.
like don't wait to go to the dentist when you have tooth pain. Um, no, it's tough for me because so much of the switch recently in my career was really motivated by the need for financial stability. And I, so some of my advice to my younger self would be really motivated by that. Like, I think um, I was kind of looking in the wrong place for stability
Mm,
early in my career by maybe not wrong place. I guess I would have expanded my horizons about where I could find a sustainable job early. I was very focused on the nonprofit world, which I am glad I spent so much time in. I feel strongly about it, but I kept running up against this thing where I was in conflict between the mission of the organization I was in and then the mission of my own theater company. They were too close, and that was difficult. Whereas the work I do now, 90% of my time is spent on RWS, and it makes the off hours and the weekend hours that I spend on my own work much more precious, um, and much more focused. That's not to say that the work I did before wasn't focused, but
Right.
it was. I also wasn't like feeding the kind of the earth parts of my being, like the physical, tactile, material parts of my existence, because that felt so profane. And
Right.
it is nice to have vision insurance. It's nice to have dental insurance. I
Yeah.
am really enjoying a season of having my physical needs met in a more robust way. And I honestly wish I'd known more about themed entertainment as a younger producer, because it just never really seemed available to me. It wasn't on my radar until a few years ago. And then I went, oh, these are actually places where I can really do what I want to do, as opposed to the nonprofit world where to move up and to advance, you're fundraising. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that, but that is the life. And you really can only be fundraising for one thing at a time.
Yeah. No, it's very much true. I mean, I keep on casting my own mind back to, my college days, and it's funny because like one of the folks who came out of the folks who came out of the school, some folks, they ran it, Broadway, some folks they ran it indie theater, some folks they ran it film, and like one guy like sort of fell into a job at Universal like out of college,
Mm-hmm.
and I think literally like came down to like run at film, but I was like got a day job at the park,
Right.
and he was stage managing things, and now he's up in the ranks, right? Because he's been at it for like a quarter, basically a quarter of a century now, right? So
Mm-hmm.
he's a key member of that team, and late 90s, early aughts, coming out of theater school or coming out of like a theater program at a state university like I did, like generally, unless you were coming out of Cal Arts or SCAD or somewhere that was feeding that industry, you did
Yeah.
not know that theater people wound up inside themed entertainment.
And
Like 10
yet,
years ago, I didn't know it.
no, I didn't
Yeah.
either. And
Yeah.
yet you go to a themed entertainment meetup, almost everyone's a theater person way back.
Almost every single person is a
Almost
theater person.
everybody.
Yeah.
And the way that our industry works, the way that we work on projects is so familiar to theater people. It's project based. It's you're with this group, like kind of the natural hierarchy is very similar. So it's very comfortable as a theater person to work in themed entertainment. And I mean, I went to graduate school for theater management and nobody ever brought it up.
Yeah.
And I'm shocked by that now. I mean, I graduated in 2015.
Yeah. Not that long ago.
No, and I'm just shocked that that was never kind of presented as an option, because the
And
skills are so transferable
you
and
were
it's
doing
really
that.
sustainable.
Yeah.
It's
And
a
you were doing that
sustainable
here
way
in the
to make a living.
Southland. And
Yes.
you did the grad school here in the Southland, where there's all these companies, right? There's
I
two
know.
places where there's a lot of themed entertainment companies, Southern California and Florida, for reasons that are completely obvious, right?
Right.
And
And
yeah,
I think the designers were perhaps more aware. Brittany Blauck was the same year as me, and she's had an incredible career in themed entertainment at a number of very highly respected companies. And I just don't know why it didn't dawn on me. It was really kind of set up that, you graduate from this program, which I don't want it to sound like I'm
no, no,
denigrating
no,
the
not at all.
program.
Yeah,
I think this is a broader issue.
yeah,
But it was like your career path is to become a managing director at a nonprofit. And I started to realize like that doesn't really fit it's not really a fit for me. I need to have my creative side be part of my everyday life. I need to have more of an artistic voice. And managing directors don't really get that. They have a say, but they're not choosing seasons.
yeah,
So yeah, it took a long time to kind of get off that nonprofit track and figure out there's got to be something different here. And I think the other thing happening was that the industry was growing. I think themed entertainment has kind of exploded.
Yeah.
And there's more opportunities now than there were 8 years ago.
And hopefully even more as we watch, retail and commercial real estate trying to figure out WTF to do with all the stock they have.
Yep.
And I think we are starting to see bits and pieces of that. Yeah. Well, Monica, speaking of themed entertainment, you gotta and day jobs. I should probably let you go do yours.
So, I have a meeting in 10 minutes.
Oh my God. So let's let you go.
Okay.
Monica Miklas, all the links will be in the show notes to connect with you in all the various ways. And like I said, this will be after Summit, so we're not going to plug the Summit here, but I'm glad you got to come through, and I'm looking forward to hanging out with you in a couple of weeks IRL. So
likewise. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure as always.
Earlier this month, you may have heard me talk about MONSTRORAMA, which is part of Tribeca Immersive this year, a fascinating pass-through MR experience currently previewing on the Oculus Quest and starring Andy Serkis. Joining us today from Atlas V, creators of MONSTRORAMA and many other experiences, are Clement Deneux, the director of MONSTRORAMA, and Michael Masukawa, VP Business Dev Partnerships and Strategy. I said VP when I probably should have said Vice President, Michael.
VP is good. Thanks so much for having us here.
Absolutely.
I've been a long time follower of the podcast, the newsletter. Working in VR, I started in 2017, and very early on in the days of VR, we talked about kind of creating that sense of presence, of being there, and look to immersive theater and Sleep No More, because specifically as reference points. So everyone told me you got to go see it, and that's how I kind of caught wind of No Proscenium. Telling me about different immersive theater events here in Los Angeles that I could actually attend. And I saw quite a bit of good stuff up until the pandemic. But really enjoyed your kind of podcast and community and everything you and Catherine and the team put out there. So thanks for providing that.
Absolutely. I mean, Michael, I've always been aware of you at a distance, here in LA. I think we might have crossed paths once or twice over the years, at some spot, but it's there's always all these meetups and whatnot. But I got very excited when I saw that you're with Atlas V these days, because there's few companies that have their fingers in the pie of VR and AR and MR quite the way Atlas V does. And I had just thanks to the PR team, I just got a chance to experience MONSTRORAMA and had my first I'll put a explicit tag in this, but had my first holy shit moment in the headset in quite some time, thanks to this piece. So Clement, I wanted to run to you up top, and maybe you could explain what this thing is for folks who haven't had a chance to experience it at Tribeca.
Yeah, so MONSTRORAMA is a mixed reality, so MR piece. It's a vertical sliced, meaning it's like a preview or pilot for a future game or future experience, but that we hope to finish. So what you get to try, it's like the introduction to the future game, and it's an experience where you get visit a museum of monsters. And the interesting part is that the museum, it's not somewhere, it's inside your own place, inside the place where the player will play. It could be a living room, it could be anywhere he wants to experience the project. So that basically it's a museum of monsters that you get chance to visit. And for this introduction, we have one monster, which is the werewolf.
It's that the fact that you only have the werewolf, I'll admit, I didn't know that because I've only gone through once, and I was drawn to the werewolf instantly. I was like, I want to see the werewolf, and then the little monster on your wrist said oh, he always chooses the werewolf, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if I didn't have any other options, but I went straight for the werewolf. They're looking at me right now.
Yeah, the trick was working for you, absolutely.
Yeah. you have worked in this field before a few times now. You've that's the super generic way of saying, like, this is not your first rodeo working in VR, MR. What is fundamentally different about this kind of pass-through project? Because I was, aside from like having to set up the Quest to do room scale pass-through for the first time, which is itself like a different setup process, it's got to be a remarkably different challenge dealing with more of someone's localized built environment in terms of how you're going to approach telling the story.
Yeah, in fact, it's my first project in MR. I made a few pieces in VR, so it's really different because in VR you are totally immersed into another world or different world. So it was I don't know if it's easier, but the fact here that you need, technically it was a big challenge because you had to we had to create a space, a piece that can fit any places. So technically, we had to create a full 3D CGI environment that can adjust to any room, any living room. So that was the main challenge technically, but also narratively, because we had to use the specificity and of the MR, the fact that you can go from VR to AR to your own place, reality to virtual reality, and you can jump from this place to another place like that. So we had to find some stories, some narrative paths to enlarge the living room or the space of the player and to create this museum that happen inside your own space. That's so narratively it was quite also challenging because you can't you need to use everything. You need to use walls. You need to use it could be holes in your ceiling on your floor, or it could be you can use the windows, the doors. Everything we know that the player will have on his own personal space. But also we had to find something that can be that can evolve following the different different space. So yeah, that was the main challenge technically and for the narrative part.
Because like the technical part of it is, seems obvious, right? Now there's going to be animated figures moving through, not even approximation, but moving through your real space. Like the degree to which it's approximated is because the cameras on the Quest are, for at least on the one I've got, are black and white, right? Like there's some that'll have color and others have black and white, and that technology is evolving. But the narrative affordance, has got to be maybe conceptually, but the harder part, like what's showing up inside someone's home. So I'm sort of, you guys, at least for this version, for this slice, you choose to represent this as kind of like a freight elevator that manifests. I'm wondering, how did that creative choice get made as a way of anchoring someone being in this, half into their world and half into your world?
Yeah, but once we decide that in fact the museum will be not visited, but the museum will be in fact go into your own place. We'll have to find how we can move the place of the player. So the idea was to use the ceiling as a way to enlarge the space of the player. So because you can create like another ceiling only in 3D in CGI, so you can give the feeling of the player that, oh, my ceiling is now 10 meters or 10 feet higher. So it works very well in MR, and also because we all know that everybody will play the game will have one wall that we can use as a main wall for the experience. So we use the wall as a window to another world. For this experience, it will be like the old diorama in the old museum when you can see, I don't know, fake animals behind windows. So we use the same kind of universe to lock the monsters into the Museum of Monsters. So for the player, they will have their own wall becoming like a big window where the monster will be locked inside.
It felt like such an effective way to create this overlap between reality and fantasy. And like to this day, like I look up at my ceiling and I can still sort of see the infinite regress of the freight elevator. I think that was the thing that kind of like it actually was. It was looking up and seeing like, oh, I'm this, my room is now traveling, and that was the moment that kind of really got me. Almost more than anything other than just the very natural way the character, the little flying drone robot head was going around, just the way that was relating to me. Maybe to stay on that for a moment, and then Michael, I want to kind of get in some broad picture stuff about like what does it mean that this kind of work is starting to emerge at the festival level, and then where the market is standing at the moment because of the headset announcements that happened over the past month. But staying inside the narrative of the experience, how much effort was put into creating this character that Andy Serkis is voicing and not so much embodying, because it's a flying head that becomes then becomes part of the wall. Spoilers, sorry. But there's a real sense of kind of like relationship between the participant and this character right from the jump. And I'm wondering how you approached creating that.
You talking about the flying drone or about the monsters? Because he made the two voices of the two.
So Andy voiced both the curator
So I'm talking about the flying drone because I did get he's doing both the voices, but like there was something about the flying drone because the one that's on your wrist, like there's, I don't want to say it's obvious, but like because it's with you, right? It's there, it's grounded in a space, and you kind of have to bring your hand up to sort of get the full effect. But then with the drone, for me, there was just something about the way it was like moving, like that it was moving around in my room from the start. That felt a little magical to me. And I'm just wondering, it's gotta be, it's different from, say, like working like a video game, even a video game in 3D space, where yes, the avatar of the character in the game and an NPC are at a relative distance, or the way you're moving around. This, because it's your body, just like how you're animating the figure or how you're developing the physical relationship between this flying character and a person in their space, like is part of the dumb part of me is like, how does that work? But I'm wondering, like, is it on this like a set track already, and is it me as the person moving the space is kind of like moving around it, or is there like a relational thing that's going on, position tracking with the headset to where the character is, right? It's trying to keep at a certain distance to me or whatnot. I don't know. Yeah. Could you fool yourself into thinking things are going on that aren't when you're playing when you're in these things? I'm wondering what's really going on there.
No, but it's quite simple. Technically we had like a lock. The drone is locked to you, and he stay at certain distance from you, and so we design some paths for the drones to not to be too close to you, to stay at the right distance, and we test few distance to say, oh, now it's too close. It start to become a little bit too frightening, maybe. So we are looking for the right distance, and we have some option to lock the gaze of the drones to the headset. So we create this kind of relationship between the player and this thing. And so it was important to us because you enter into the world of Monsterama through a portal in a way.
Right.
So it's more like at the beginning it was like the character was like a guide to he will bring you into this world, and he becomes the main character, the main anchor man in a way of this museum, the creator of the museum. So he will serve you as a guide for most of the experience. After I maybe become something else, but it was like a guide to the museum, and a way to show you the direction, and to talk to you. And after that, the fact that Andy Serkis was really great to create the character, the voice, to make it some maybe more funny that we thought at the beginning, and to give all this variation of almost English style voice and vocabulary that create a very interesting character, I think.
We have this sort of maxim in immersive theater that no production survives contact with the audience. Everything sort of changes. I'm wondering, when it came to developing that, you mentioned like, oh, this was too close, or maybe this is too far, like how that character was the distance it was to the player. How early were you testing that with people in headset? Like how soon did you start getting into the embodied mode of the design, or were those things that you were figuring out in kind of animatic wireframes? Because I think that's the thing that I'm most fascinated with in terms of VR storytelling and augmented reality or MR storytelling, are the embodied relationships between these digital characters and the actual participants, and the way the illusion of connection is created through that, just through the animation or through locking. So is that something that you start, within the first couple of weeks, as soon as you've got a mock-up together, throw someone in the headset and see how it actually looks in the headset? Or does that kind of testing come later in the development process?
It's almost in two process. At the beginning, we design almost everything with gray boxes, and so the drone will be just a big gray box, sometimes too close to you, and we adjust all this specific stuff. Maybe the last 2 weeks to be precise and sharp with with the distance between everything. But I can. It's quite simple to make some adjustments on the Unity engine, and just test almost immediately with a art tech developer.
Cool. And you just mentioned Unity, so this was built.
Yeah, absolutely.
This was built in Unity. All right, good to know. That's a question that's been running through. I've been actually past couple of weeks like, what was this built on? So and trying to suss that. I could have just turned it back on. I'm sure it's got the Unity logo in there. But it's like, why the easy thing? Turn the headset back on. That's sometimes the hardest part, is turning the headset back on. With that as a rough segue, Michael, I wondered if you could sort of talk about where you see the market at the moment, because obviously we just had the Vision Pro announcement, but right before that we had the Quest 3 announcement, and both of these devices are pushing pass through in an aggressive way, targeting two different parts of the consumer market, obviously in terms of the prices. But from where you're sitting, are you seeing this as a moment in time where pass-through MR is going to have its moment in the sun, and maybe you guys hit this crest at exactly the right moment?
Yeah, if I remember, I forgot if it was Oculus Connect 3 or Oculus Connect 4, even then that, Meta was pushing hand tracking as an option, trying to get developers to do it. From Cubism, I love that game, and that works with hand tracking. So for a while now, they've been trying to push developers to do both controller and hand tracking. So that tech just keeps getting better and better. And then with the Quest 2, pass-through was a lot better. Quest 3, the Apple Vision Pro, obviously, pass-through is going to be really great on all these future headsets. So I think we've started developing content at, like you said, kind of the right time to start showcasing all these potentials with both of these headsets and all future content. So Whether that is, we designed a VR experience and also have a extra MR experience that kind of goes on as an add-on to it. That might be something we explore, or, in this case, the MONSTRORAMA, designing an MR experience from the ground up. And just something creatively I want to touch on. One of the challenges here is we don't know what your room is, right? We can't say that,
Right.
everybody's going to have a couch in their living room for this experience. But it would be super cool if we could do something where you hide behind your furniture and a monster's stalking you around the room. So maybe we'll have to do a level where it requires some object in the middle of the room for you to hide behind. It requires a hiding spot. Maybe, I don't know if that spoils kind of what would happen in future experiences, but that would be kind of leaning more into the promise of the premise of this game to do something like that.
Well, how is the studio as a whole, both in terms of this game as maybe a showcase for what y'all can do, but also this idea of there is a new platform, if you will, being developed here in pass through with MR, and a lot of people seem to be excited about it. Maybe some of that's just like the novelty part of it. VR has been around for a minute, so people are like, but VR, we've already done VR. There's the fact that people are interacting with their own real spaces. Like there's novelty there, but I'm wondering, what does it really afford as creatives in terms of interacting with people's real spaces that way, right? Mm-hmm. Like, because my sense is that if pass-through is really going to be a thing, because there is a technical challenge there. Like you were just talking about the creative possibility of, someone's got a couch to hide behind, or a chair that they could hide behind, but you don't know if they're going to have that. But then there's also just the compute power of tracking the room realistically, right? Or getting to the point where maybe this could live in a few rooms in the house. So it's like, I'm not just in one room, but like the werewolf's after me, I run to the kitchen, it can't find me in the kitchen, and I may be going around and around, right? Which would be really, really fun, like running around the house, playing tag with, a monster, right? Mm-hmm. We're getting closer in terms of compute power to be able to do that.
I would just say that, I've been working I started off in television, transitioned into VR in 2017, and working at Secret Location, when we get pitches and when we're developing projects, we always ask, why VR? Why does the story need to be told in VR? What does that sense of presence do to elevate it? If it's, back in the Oculus Rift, HTC Vive days, what's going to compel someone to power up their PC, launch Steam or Oculus, and then put the headset on and do this experience versus just, picking up your iPad or picking up your Nintendo Switch. And that's still, a question in VR. Why do you make this experience so compelling for that? And with MR, I think we just need to do the same design considerations, which is, what is it about this story where MR tells it in a much better way, and you need MR to tell the story versus VR. And with Atlas, I've been looking at the company for a long time. I saw Spheres, I saw Battlescar, many of the other projects that they've done, and they always kind of gloomy eyes. Is also great, but they always kind of keep pushing the boundaries of kind of innovation and storytelling. And I think here with this last week at Tribeca, we had this MR piece, we had a augmented reality piece, and we also had a AI film. Where we used Stable Diffusion and other techniques to kind of animate a live action film and turn it into kind of an animated film. But that's why I'm excited to be here with this team and see kind of their point of view on MR and all these things and how we could push storytelling in new ways.
And that's one of the things that's always impressed me about the studio, is that there is an instinct for working at the edge of where the tech is, but always tying back to a sense of character, a sense of story, right? Like I don't get, for instance, super excited about Stable Diffusion for all kinds of reasons, but watching that film, because there was a film at the heart of it, and it was, it had a point and a theme, and there was something very human coming through that piece. And with every single one of the pieces I've seen come through the studio, there's something very human, even in this piece about monsters, right? Like you're telling a story about, liberation and freedom, and, the abuse of the environment, and the role that we can play, or the role that we play passively or actively in those dynamics in this tiny little slice of a game about a werewolf. And I don't think there's a question of that. It's just something I consistently, just consistently
Thanks for
impressed
picking
by.
up on all that. No, I appreciate that.
No, just like, I mean, like, you guys could just be maybe, I don't know, trying to make some shooters, like those are popular things. Like, why go the route? Why be attracted to stuff? Why go that route rather than just like maybe the lowest common denominator, or the path of least resistance, which is, grab a shooter or make like a social dynamic game, as opposed to something that's like, got an art side to it, is generally for like, one person, or work on some like, really complicated projects that have, a social impact point. Why go that way? Yeah.
I've only been with the company 5 months, so sorry, Clement, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I think we are just concerned about about stories, and the stories are important for us, I think, and the way we told stories in this technology there is no point if you are not telling something, even if it's not a very it's a big thing, but just making the effort to just telling something that we care about. It's the thing we try to do for every project. And I think a lot of other studios are very good to make good shooters. Maybe we are not too good enough to make ones, but I think for everybody working in the creative department, and also in the technical department, you can feel that the story we try to write and tell are important for everybody in their life and in their work. And that's kind of the DNA of the company. I think you're right. It's telling the best story we can with the technology we have.
And I had the pleasure of visiting the team in France not too long ago. And I think we're just a group of passionate storytellers. It's kind of French to say, hey, we care about the arts, we care about stories. And, they do have a rich gaming history with Ubisoft and a lot of great gaming companies. But having spent time with the team at Atlas, I just think that unless we're going to really do a great project that kind of moves this art form forward, then maybe that's not right for us. So we definitely want to do commercial projects. We have some outside IP we're starting to work with. Wallace and Gromit Grand Getaway was just announced not too long ago. So we're very excited to work with Aardman Studios and bring that Wallace and Gromit animation style into VR. I think we've really nailed it with how we've done it. So again, that's kind of, taking some form of storytelling. It's going to have gameplay, it's going to have mini games, challenges, puzzles, things like that throughout. But it is bringing a long episode of Wallace and Gromit into VR. So I think that's kind of what got the team excited about that one.
It also strikes me like I know how active, at least here in the States, like the French consulate tends to be like really active about promoting French XR, right? Like in a real way. Like I even got summoned to the embassy one time. That's not a brag; it just happened. And it does give me some heart though, knowing how corporate and commercial the States is, how little arts funding there is, and even looking at say like England, how tight the arts funding can get there. The fact that France has this deep relationship with the cinema and supporting the arts as like on a civic level, that is spilled over into the XR space gives me some hope that you guys get to have a little bit more runway to get creative and to push the boundaries and the envelopes of the storytelling side of the medium that maybe, a studio operating in, San Jose or based out of there, or Palo Alto. I'll just pick Palo Alto, for instance, maybe doesn't get to do the same thing because they don't have that tradition of backing the arts and taking those kinds of risks. They're not coming out of the same culture.
Yeah, having come from a Canadian company before this, funding via the Canada Media Fund, Ontario Creates, and tax credits was a very important part for getting the initial funding together for our projects. And now that I've seen it kind of on the French side, yeah, similar thing. When you have a government that supports these projects and can give you that kind of that initial funding to prototype, to build something out, to test if these concepts work or not. So by the time I think we get funding for most of our projects, we've already had some of the government funding and subsidies and tax credits that help us build a prototype. We might team with Arte or one of the kind of European broadcasters. We might team up with another country in Europe to get unlock additional funding and work with another team over there and co-produce. And then, maybe go get funding from a platform or another source. So I've kind of seen some of these where they're kind of Frankenstein together from kind of 5 different funding sources. But hey, it results in really great projects.
Yeah. I mean, hell, even the Warner Brothers is like doing that for like the Flash movie. There was some title card I saw last night that I did not recognize at all, but I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's some funding from somewhere, and that's not even an art film. Like, it's just the nature of the business now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell Andy Misuchetti that I said it wasn't an art film, but that's not here. I had fun. If I swear. Coming back to MONSTRORAMA for a second as I wrap up and soon to let you guys go, but what's the destiny here? Popping out at Tribeca, which is sort of now in the States the big premiere fest for XR, right? I think it's definitely got the crown these days and has for some number of years. Is this show going on the road? Will we see it at the Vertical Slice at some more festivals? Is there a sense of like, where in the cycle we are with this, or to maybe one day people getting a monster in their home?
Yeah, we're very happy with our chance to premiere it at Tribeca. We are adapting, kind of just learning from testing with everyone and taking in that feedback and kind of tinkering with the build a little bit more. But here's hoping that the reaction was good and we could get some more funding to continue with the project.
All right.
And we are just in the middle of writing the full game, so it's quite it's still on the process of what's happening after.
Yeah.
So and we hope to get enough funds to make like a 2 or 3 hour game at the end, something like that.
Yeah.
It was the idea at the beginning of the project.
I definitely I hope you guys do. Like, seriously, like, there's, for me, it feels like there's a real, whether we're talking VR or the AR or the MR modes, real story driven kind of adventure or puzzle adventure games are probably like the main thing I'm interested in there being in this. Like, I'm still, the formative thing for me is still Vader Immortal and spending hours upon hours like going through that space, and the way you get kind of anchored in memory. Like, these are immersive experiences, full stop. Like, the technology, as wow as it is, kind of fades into the background and it becomes about being in this world. And there's something about the idea of, with the MR, of the way our world intersects with that world. And there's so much that can be teased out of that germ of an idea. And even from this vertical slice, I can see that you guys are really leaning into that, and that really sings in the work. So I'm desperate to see the whole thing when it comes together.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Try your best.
Anything else that's going on with either of you or with Alice 5 that folks should be tuning in on or looking for before we head off into the weekend sunset?
I already mentioned Waltz and Gromit. Just kind of be on the lookout for new releases from us in the near future. And I'm here in LA. Pierre, our creative director, is in New York. The rest of the team is in Paris. So if you want to meet with any of us, feel free to reach out.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you for spending time. And I know what time it is for Michael. Clement, I don't know what time it is for you. So I see some light, but
Yeah, I'm in Colorado, so it's not far.
oh, it's Colorado. Okay, good. Whew. It's getting nervous there for a second. I was like, how late are we keeping him up? Colorado's easy. That's easy.
Yeah,
Well, have a great weekend, guys, and thanks for spending a half hour with me today.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Once again, I want to thank Monica, Clement, and Michael for being our guests on the show this week. Check the show notes to follow along and connect with their work, their respective work. Just a couple of minutes ago, my time, I said, I'll get back to our regular broadcasting duties, which some people might think like, oh, there's no podcast next week. No. There's going to be a podcast next week. I'm just doing everything like out of order. I'm recording this on Wednesday night because suddenly there's travel this weekend. And again, I'm getting nervous. I don't want to jinx things. And then maybe if I say that too often, then I'm going to. Anyway, look, don't let me psych myself around here. Maker willing, this time next week, I'll just be telling you happy stories and thanking the people who are responsible. So let's leave it at that. Next week's going to be a fun episode. I was going to say, regardless of whether I'm having a good time. Next week is going to be a fun episode already because Parker is stepping up into the host seat. I'm riding shotgun on this coming episode. We're going to be Parker's talking with Eric Garcia of Detour Dance in San Francisco about We Build Houses Here, a piece we are very excited about that happened earlier this year. And on the site right now, you can find all kinds of things. It's been a really busy week. There was the rundown. There's been some one-off reviews. There should be a feature article that I'm going to have to work on tonight after I finish this. Just so much stuff is going on. And like I said before, there's a lot of bright stuff happening. So, tune in next week for a fantastic interview. Really, it's a great interview, between Parker and Eric. And also with the notes on, whatever shenanigans I got up to this weekend and some shenanigans that are to come. It's an exciting time, everybody. And I thank you for being along for the ride. And I hope we get some more people along for the ride so that we can start taking this even further. And with that, the associate producer of this podcast is Parker Sella. Music for No Proscenium is by Chris Porter of the Speakeasy Society and Solar the Podcast. Special thanks to Siobhan O'Loughlin for voicing our intro. This podcast is written, edited, hosted, produced, blah, 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 by yours truly. I'm Noah Nelson. And until next time, I'll see you at the show.